Was John Gotti's son, Junior Gotti, actually a tough mobster? Let's check it out. I'm James Gladwish and welcome to OC Shorts, bringing you detailed historical snapshots of the American Mafia and other organised crime. Feel free to subscribe if you like that sort of thing. Today, former Bonanno crime family associate Frank Fiordilino joins me to discuss mobsters from other crime families such as the Gambinos and Colombos who operated in the area that he grew up in, Queens and Brooklyn. For those not familiar with Frank, here's a bit about him. Frank Fiordilino had two uncles in the Bonanno crime family and various other relatives involved in organised crime. He would enter a life of crime himself and was associated with Vito Guzzo Jr. and the infamous Giannini crew. Following a murder and murder conspiracy charge, he became a government witness in the early 2000s. He can be seen on the excellent YouTube channel 52 Topics with co-host Brett, which is well worth checking out. The link to this is in the comments below.
There was people in my age group, a little bit older, that had that kind of aura on the streets too, if not around the same age. You had a lot of the kids around John Jr.'s friends. They basically got away with murder. I mean, if your father's John Gotti, you get away with a lot of stuff, So you had a lot of those guys. That John A. Lights. I know people always. He was a tough kid. I mean, he'll shoot you in the second. It wasn't like he wouldn't. There was more. There was Junior. Junior got his hands dirty too, and you had a lot of that going on. There was the late James from Goodfellas. His son Frankie had a reputation. Carmine Agnello. You had a lot of kids from that area, especially from the Woodhaven area, were very capable guys. So that's what was going on. 90s was a very rough decade.
Growing up in that area, did you hear much about the likes of John Carniglia and people like that, and his brother Charles?
No, you would see their kids around, and then they'd be like, "That's John Caniglia's." And you got to remember, there's a big age. There's almost 25 plus between me and these guys. So it was like, that's his son, and who's he? He's a guy that's around John Gotti, John Gotti Sr. That is, there was a big pop star phenomenon that was going on in the mid '80s around John Gotti.
So were you're familiar with obviously Skinny Dom Pizzonia?
Yeah, I mean with the names and everything, like Jojo Carrazzo, I would see him from far away. I was Howie, who I was pretty close with on the street. Not more, two different families, but we were close in the sense we would hang out in the same places. And that was John Gotti's driver, Jojo was, and Howie was Jojo's driver. So yeah, I knew them. To that extent. I was more familiar, obviously, with the Sicilian faction of the Gambino family that were from my neighborhood. There's guys I won't talk about that obviously is still active. That I do care for, even though it probably wish me dead. You know what I mean? Guys around Patsy Conti's cool. We'll talk about him. I was very familiar with him, and very just people that I always were dear to me.
Anyone from that kind of from the Gambinos in your area that people were like, watch out for him. He's particularly, he could be particularly vicious. Was there anyone like that at all?
They were more of a low-key type of a faction, if you will. They weren't like the American side of the Gambino family that you just see, and the big guy with the tattoos and the roids. These guys were like skinny guys walking around, but equally as dangerous. I'm trying to think who had that. Look, at the end of the day, were they capable of killing you in a second? Definitely, we understood that. That wasn't that. But some people come off differently to others, and that's, you got a lot of that, and they didn't. They just, if they didn't want to talk, they just didn't talk. If they talked to you, they came out like professor. Sometimes we talked about Tony Giordano. A lot of that stuff goes around the Sicilians.
So obviously you relate to, obviously, in one of your many relations, obviously Dino Calabro. I mean,
sure.
he's been linked with numerous killings. So obviously, I mean, he must have been. People must have. Was that just him doing his job, or was he particularly feared? Was he just capable? So talk to us about Dino a little bit.
It was treacherous. I mean, like he had this quality. If you want to talk about somebody who was very Sicilian and an Italian American upbringing, because that he grew up different than we did. He grew up in Bensonhurst. He grew up in a time where he tried to hide his Sicilian a little bit more because his friends were more Italian American. But then when it started working for him, when he got in his 20s and 30s, knowing that people knew where he was from, and he had family in that pedigree, it helped him out to get to where he had to go. But the stuff that a lot of Italians off the boat first generation kids go through when they're hanging out with Italian Americans, they have these guys. They like to goof around with the accents and everything. So he went through a lot of that shit. But at the end of the day, the more and more the Sicilian came out, the more and more he became the person he always was. He was a dangerous kid.
I mean, talk about the Colombos. In our last video, you mentioned that you obviously knew Jackie DeRoss, and
Yeah.
obviously he told you the story about Charlie Moose and him, being a bit wary of Carmine Galante. I mean, what is your knowledge of like the likes of Jackie DeRoss and Charlie Moose?
Charlie, not that. Oh, Charlie was abusive. That's what he used to say. That motherfucker, he was so abusive that they had to chase him down to the West Coast to
Yeah.
get rid of him or whatever. He would talk about that. But he was a very approachable, go-lucky, friendly guy. Jackie he was like the Bush Balls a lot, a little too much sometimes with certain people that they'd get mad. We had a good rapport, me and him. Funny as hell. And totally different from Allie Boy. Allie Boy, where Allie wouldn't talk about mob stuff. Where Jack will wait for Jerry Capisi to come every week in jail where we were there. He goes, look at this shit. They're ready to make another takedown. I'm like, oh god damn. He looked like Don Rickles.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen some photos. Were you familiar with obviously Wild Bill Cutola at all? Obviously knowing the
No,
name.
no, no. No, I heard he was good. Good in his position in regards to being his crew always talks very well about him. But I didn't know. I mean, now and then I talk to Billy Jr. Very, and he talks about his dad, and he talks about the adages. Sometimes his dad or the quotes, and I'm like, wow, that was a pretty guy. Sounded like he was ahead of his time. But no, I didn't know.
So when that kind of third Colombo War was going on, obviously it's in a different kind of neighborhood from you. What was the kind of talk on the street at the time? Was it like, don't be seen with Colombo guys in case something happens, or what was it
That
like?
was always the thing, though. They're a different breed. I mean, if you ever go to jail and you run into a couple of Italian guys and they're hanging out around each other, you know what family they belong to. They're a little rougher. Fun thing. I like the Colombo guys. They were pretty. You got guys with tattoos on their heads. But a good group. But yeah, they always had that reputation, always.
And obviously, kind of you associated with like the Giannini crew. Did you know any other kind of what they call like the feeder teams, the farm gangs?
Farm team.
Like yeah, like the Tanglewood Boys and things like that. I suppose it's different neighborhoods, right?
I mean, every mob neighborhood has farm teams. It's just that kind of like, again, that was the phenomenon that Jerry Capizzi started in the '90s. Kind of like labeling these streets that we hung out with. And I mean, I was aware of some of the kids. There was the kids, the Antonucci's I grew up with. They were, I guess, the young guns they got called, and they were Woodhaven. But we grew up with them in Ridgewood, and they would come around now and then. As far as Brooklyn, no, because I mean, I met some of these guys in jail, like Mikey Yamin, who I become close with. He's a bad damn you guy, and not to know that him and Dino, they were going to war. Not him basically, but his friends and Dino's friends. I remember the kid OJ who gets killed. I seen him at a Knick game like 3 weeks before that happened. And I was told that, the stories come out, the 302s. But at the time, anytime somebody gets killed, and I said this before, it automatically you think they did something wrong because that's the narrative that you get until you really know what happened. And then you go from there,
So finally, were there any memories or any discussions while you were growing up about what was going on with the DeMeos? I know it's a different part of the thing, but that DeMeo crew with obviously Anthony Center, Joey Testa. Was there any kind of street talk to say when you're growing up?
No, they were in another part of the city, the Brooklyn part as well. But no, I mean, I come across them in a book, the Murder Machine book,
Yeah.
which and like a lot of other people. But no, not at all.
I hope you found that interesting. Thanks for watching.